All right, today we have the box pulled off of the RZR 900. I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a hot cams automatic cam chain tensioner. It comes on here with a hydraulic tensioner, just not the greatest setup that Polaris has ever come up with. It's skip timing. The RZR was not revving up past about 2,500 RPMs. We also had some electrical components fail kind of all at the same time. So I've replaced stator, I've shot a video on that, as well as replaced regular rectifier and tested that system. Our RZR now is just not revving up. We've got new spark plugs in the cylinder head here. I'm going to show you how to remove the brace here and then remove the cylinder head cover, check timing, and then install this automatic cam chain tightener. So stick with us. We're going to get a couple more of these components pulled off of there. I'll show you a quick video on how to do that, and I'll show you how to find top dead center, as well as install this new hot cams cam chain tensioner. If this video has been helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate any feedback that we can get from you guys. We enjoy making these videos. We hope that you are able to work on some of your own machines, not have to take it into the shop and pay some expensive service fees. So make sure you watch our other videos on the Polaris RZR. We've got plenty of videos on this machine. So thanks for watching. All right, we obviously have the bed taken off at this point. We pulled a couple bolts off of this brace right here. You can see us moving it back and forth. So we've got our, here's a vent line here that goes to our cylinder head. And here is some fuel components here. We're actually gonna unhook this. That way we can pull this through the brace, get that brace out of there a little bit farther. Push on that connector then there, and then you're able just to pull that out. Now we're able to slide this brace out. Instead of removing a lot of these electrical components over here, we're just going to leave that brace just like that. We're able to take then and move this out of the way far enough. Now we're going to get in here with our torque sockets and remove our torque bolts here. First, I'm going to remove our spark plug caps. And then I'm actually going to remove our PTO side. This would be our left-hand side, our driver's side spark plug. You can remove them both, just remove one. That's kind of up to you. But it's a lot easier to find top dead center if you can see down in there and see that piston. So clean these areas out before you remove these spark plugs. That way you're not dropping debris down in there. So I'm going to take compressed air, blow out some of these areas, make sure it's good and clean, and then remove these 4 bolts there. All right. Then I'll take a magnet, stick it down in there. We're able to pull our spark plug out. That's a brand new spark plug. It's only been run for about 10 seconds, so not a lot of buildup on it. If there was, I'd be a little concerned. We've got a T40 torque to pull off here. We've got 4 of them. 2 in line and then 2 that kind of go parallel to your cam chain. All right, I'm gonna remove these. They're a specialty bolt here, and they've got rubber grommets that seal up that cylinder head cover. So I'm gonna pull those off, the ones that I can get to now. And I'm gonna take this cover and set it aside. All right, now we have our cams exposed here. We also have this rubber gasket on our cylinder head. I'm gonna move that out of the way for now, just so we don't rip it or damage it. Okay, now we can find top dead center. So the way to do that, if your cams are lined up, would actually be marks on your actual cam sprockets, and I'll show you those. I'll show you a close-up picture here. The other thing that you can do on your PTO side, on your driver's side, you want to make sure your lobes are facing either direction. So this lobe should be facing forward, your exhaust, and your intake should be facing back. And that's how you know that your cams are in the right position. Now, if your cams are completely out of whack, what I would do is pull your crank position sensor off of your flywheel there, and I'll go down and show you how to do that. All right, it's an 8mm, and that is what it looks like there. So we removed our 2 stator bolts here, our stator cover bolts. That way we can get to it a little bit easier, push that down a little bit, and then we're gonna remove that 8mm bolt there. Okay, we'll take and pull that plug out. Just kind of spin it a little bit. There we go, we got that plug removed. Now, I'd grab a light because you're gonna need to be able to see down in there, and you're gonna have to do that from up top here. The next thing I would do is actually pull your clutch cover. That way you can use your drive clutch to turn that motor over. Okay, you're not gonna need to completely remove that cover. You can just leave it just like that, just enough to turn that motor over. Now this part's gonna be a little bit more difficult for you to see. First, we're gonna find top dead center, and then we're gonna remove that cam chain tensioner. So I'm gonna turn that clutch over. Like I said, a lot of times you use your front clutch, spin that over. You spin that front clutch forward. All right, it's at top dead center. Now we're also gonna look at our flywheel to make sure that that mark is lined up. So I'm gonna grab a light, shine it down in there. Okay, so we are at top dead center. Our exhaust cam actually jumped timing this time. And so we need to loosen up these bolts here, remove these, and go ahead and move that exhaust cam. Looks like about 1 tooth over. What I'm gonna do, just because, I don't know if it's completely necessary, but I take a Sharpie, and I'll actually mark the chain as well as the sprocket. That way I know how far I need to go, just in case I get a little bit confused while I'm doing this. So right now I'm going to take and put our cam chain, remove our cam chain tensioner. All right, so all the bolts are pulled. We could actually remove these cam chain holders at this time. You will have to remove these to flip these cam chains. So, or flip these sprockets, I guess. All right, so I'm gonna take that. I like to keep these in the same order. So pull both of these off. Pull them off straight. And then, if you guys notice this, we've actually got a slider that goes on top here that the last guy that tore into this motor forgot to put on. So we're gonna install that. We got another one here. So lift these cams up then, shift them a tooth. And then I like to put a little bit of pressure. So the cam chain tensioner is on this side. There's supposed to be a plate that you can put in back here. You don't necessarily have to have that. Just a little more work if you don't, and I don't have that. So if you put the pressure on here, kind of get that to where it needs to be there, or your line should line up. Now we'll do the same with the intake cam. That was actually in the right place. We pulled that tension off and it popped out of place. So we'll get that put back right where our mark was, and that's part of the reason why I like the marks. That'll give you an idea where we were at, and if it jumps timing like it did, you can just go ahead and put it right back where it was. All right, we've got our cams into place there. On the back side then, the slot should be lined up with your cylinder head as well. Now what we can do is take and either wipe the marks off of our sprockets. I like to know that I'm on the right spot now. I don't want it jumping timing again while we're kind of putting everything together. So as long as you know where you're at. So in our case, the intake cam has a line directly on it. And the exhaust cam is 2 teeth from where it was. So that actually jumped 2 teeth. Now, I like to take and put these back. And you'll be really careful when you're starting these to get them started before you use any kind of ratchet, because if they're not starting straight, you could damage the threads on your cylinder head. And if that's the case, you're going to have a bad cylinder head, which is never good. They are not cheap. So get those going in there straight. There will be a little bit of pressure on there just because your cam shafts will have a little bit of tension on them. Then going back together here, we'll torque these small 8mm. We've got our new piece here. Got a part number if you're needing this piece. You do want to make sure it's there. Kind of helps guide that cam chain as well as put a little bit of pressure on there. So that just goes underneath of there and slide those bolts in the top. Again, same thing on these. Make sure you use your hands to snug these up. Okay, now we're going to tighten these up. All right, we've got our hot cams tensioner here. I'm going to screw this in. There's a little brass fitting there that is used to seal this up. So I'm going to take and screw that in. All right. Okay, we're going to torque these down. I'm going to keep a little bit of pressure on this chain. I've got something here to hold this cam chain. This is the one that keeps on slipping. So hopefully this piece of metal here will hold this cam from jumping time while I tighten this down. Like I said, the correct tool is a whole plate that basically you stick in here, and it kind of keeps that whole area, or keeps both of those cam shafts from moving. Seems like we haven't had any problems with the exhaust cam jumping. It's the intake that we're having issues with. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down. I'm going to snug these up with a ratchet just to get it close a little bit quicker, and then I'll tighten it up with the torque wrench. All right, I've got my torque wrench here. I'm going to tighten these down to 7 foot-pounds. It's actually supposed to be, I believe, 84 inch-pounds, but I don't have my inch-pound torque wrench here. So I'm going to slide this piece on, and there is a pattern that you do need to follow. I'll show you what that is here in a little bit. Okay, now to put the remainder of the cam chain tensioner on. We've got our gasket there. Put the gasket on, and then we'll leave that pin in there until we get it completely installed. And then we will take this pin out and run this smaller bolt with the brass fitting in there. So I'm going to slide this on here. Very important you remember this next piece. We got the pin that we're going to slide in there. We'll put that in, and then we'll put this piece in. Make sure our gasket's in place here. And there is direction on this cam chain tensioner. It'll say up on the side that Hot Cams feels it needs to be up. I can't remember which direction that is. There's a flat spot on that tensioner, and that's what kind of keeps that tensioner from being pushed back, which is why it's such a better setup than the one from Polaris was. So that's why they have that up, that direction there, to keep that going the direction that they want it to. We'll snug both those up. This is a billet aluminum, so you don't have to go crazy tight on this when you're tightening down these 10 millimeters. Now I believe we can pull that pin now out at this time. That should kind of push into place. Now we have this bolt here that we'll put on. We won't put that on quite yet, as we might need to take our screwdriver in there, make sure that completely released, and make sure there's enough pressure on there. All right, now we have that tensioner installed correctly. Now we can pull this piece out here, our special tool that we have in here, and then everything should pop back to where it should be. I've kept this ratchet in here because I wasn't totally sure, just to put a little bit of tension on this chain. What I didn't want to do is this chain to have too much slop up here for and our holder here not to do its job. So this was just kind of security for me. I'm going to remove that at this time. And again, we have not, we still have our marks on our cam chain, so we can verify that we're in the correct position here. I'm going to remove this holder at this time. Here's a spot for a 21 millimeter wrench on your cam. So I'm just going to kind of let this out easy. Make sure everything stays in place here. Okay, and everything is where it needs to be. So if you don't have that special tool from Polaris, you can use a wrench. Maybe invite your buddy over to hold a wrench for you while you get that into place. Not a tough project without that tool. but it is just kind of gives you a free hand if you don't have that special tool from Polaris. Okay, now what we're going to do, put our cylinder head cover back on. Don't forget our rubber gasket underneath of there. And then we're going to buckle this all up here. Before we do that, what I'm going to do is actually spin this motor over one more time just to make sure everything holds in place. We'll find top dead center again. We'll look for that mark on our flywheel there. Okay, we're on top dead center. Our marks on our cam sprockets are lined up. Our marks on our cam shafts are lined up. And our piston is on top dead center on the PTO side. So we are safe to buckle this thing back up and get back to riding. All right, we're going to throw our gasket on there. Make sure that's completely sealed. Push it down in all the right places here. Throw our cylinder head cover on. Tighten down these Torx. Okay, we need to put our spark plug in there. We didn't take the stator side out. Okay, we got that vent line hooked up. We've got a brace here for our oil tank. We'll grab that. I'm going to hook this up quick so we don't forget this connector up. We've got a couple bolts that we need to install this fuel rail to, and then our bolts for this brace here. And then we've got a couple bolts holding this air box on. We've got a new air filter that we'll grab and install. All right, we're going to tighten our crank position sensor down there. It's gonna be a little bit hard for you guys to see there, but that's what we're doing. And we'll go back up here and finish some of these brace bolts. All right, once we get these brace bolts on here, I'm gonna fire it up actually after I get the clutch cover on here, kind of keep some of those components from flopping around. I'd like to fire it up, make sure everything's gonna run properly before I completely buckle this RZR up. If you guys have questions or comments, make sure and leave those below. If this video has been helpful, again, give us a thumbs up. We'll quickly walk through the rest of this process here once we fire it up, but I wanted to get it fired up, make sure everything's going to run properly, warm up properly, and idle just fine. If it does, like I said, we'll finish buckling it up. Starts up and idles great, revs up just fine. So we will finish buckling this thing up. We're actually going to put this RZR up for sale here as soon as we get it all buckled up here and cleaned up. If you got an idea what this thing is worth, comment below. If you're interested, make sure you send me a message. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have questions or comments, make sure you ask those. Make sure you subscribe to our channel if you found this video helpful. Give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family. We appreciate any feedback we can get. Again, I'm going to quickly go through putting this back together here. That way you guys have an idea what we're doing after this point. But I think you all pretty much have a good idea how to get this back together from this point on. So thanks again for watching.